2006. And we also have with us past Commander Alan Grzinski, who is our cameraman. And today we are honored to have Norm Bohan sharing his experiences with us. So, thank you, Norm. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted back in high school, in fact. I was 17, joined up to the reserve over here in Poughkeepsie. I lived down there in River Road over in Port Huron since I was in third grade. And in fact, that's where I'm living now. So it's been a long haul through 3 different wars. Anyway, I enlisted in the reserve in order to get in the Naval Academy. And I was successful in getting into the Naval Academy. And after I got out of the Naval Academy, things were hot and heavy in World War II. And I decided, I knew that I was going to make a career of it anyway, but I did make a career of it. And 32 years later, in 1971, I retired back to the same spot that I left. So I'd seen the world, and I found out that the Hudson River and the area here was the place I wanted to spend the rest of my life.
Now, you mentioned to me that you enlisted in Naval Reserve when you were in Poughkeepsie, and that you'd gotten an appointment to the Naval Academy from the congressman whose name was Rockefeller?
Yeah, Louis Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. And I took his competitive examinations for the appointment and was lucky to come out on top, and I got his principal appointment. So I didn't have to use the Naval Reserve route to get in.
And what was it like when you first got to the Naval Academy? Can you tell us that?
I wasn't surprised on the thing. I'd been active in the Boy Scouts, and we had all kinds of pranks that were pulled there, and just the continuation of some of that as far as the hazing was concerned. I called it hazing, but it really wasn't hazing. It was motivation. And the days were long, but I don't remember it being it wasn't tough.
How'd you do with the academics? Was that a problem?
It depended on the academic. Yeah. Some of them I did real well in. Other ones gave me, particularly Spanish, gave me a real tough time on the thing. I almost didn't get through in kind of Spanish, but I made it through with a few little tricks of the trade.
Did you have what kind of instructors did you have? What were they like?
Well, you had naval officer instructors in some subjects, and other ones you did had civilians that worked for the government. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember any of the names of the ones, but I do remember the Spanish instructors were one Spanish instructor who made it possible for me to pass by me figuring out the questions he was going to ask me, and really study up on those.
So he was helpful to you, huh?
He was helpful. Not he didn't do it deliberately. He just had a system that he taught, and I figured the system out. Worked the system so that I could get a passing mark.
You had military instructors too for drilling like that?
Well, they taught seamanship. They taught ordnance. Some of them taught marine engineering. We had the whole gamut of instruction, and we ended up with a Bachelor of Science in marine engineering and electrical engineering, I think, were the majors that made up this BS that we got.
And you mentioned to me that you fellows were so smart in your class that you were allowed to graduate early. How did that work?
We graduated in 3 years rather than the normal 4, and we still got all the subjects, except they gave it to us in the summertime. In other words, we continued school right through the summer, except for a couple of weeks we went out on small ships for summer training.
Now, what year did you start?
I went in 40, got out in 43.
So while you were in, Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Pearl Harbor was attacked, yes.
What was your memory of that? Do you remember how that went?
I just remember being over in the auditorium. It was in the evening, and I can't remember what the purpose of the auditorium at that time was, but anyway, the word came through on the PA system that Pearl Harbor had been attacked and all that. And I don't remember. Other than that, I think we were expecting something. So it just more motivation to do well and get out of there, get on with the job.
So when you graduated, then you were given a note as an assignment.
Yes, I was assigned to a destroyer in the Atlantic and operating with a British home fleet up out of Scapa Flow, which is north of the British naval base in northern Scotland. And we were covering the merman's convoys and trying to use them as bait to get the German battleship Scharnhorst out of Norway port. We were almost successful. And the next group of Canadian destroyers that relieved us over there, they were when the Scharnhorst came out, they torpedoed it and slowed it down enough for the big ships to pound it into junk.
What was the Murmansk like? I guess I've heard it's rather cold and stormy.
Well, I can remember being up there at noontime, and you see a glow on the southern horizon, and that's it for the day. And the water temperature up there was 28 degrees. Salt water freezes at just about 28 degrees. I don't remember. It wasn't particularly rough up there. And up that high in latitude. Down a little lower, it's different. So it was cold. Nobody could survive in that water for more than 10 minutes. You didn't pick somebody went over the side, or you couldn't pick one in 10 minutes. You just might as well forget about it.
How was it like in England? You were based out of England at the time, Scapa Flow?
Scapa Flow.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to think what it's like. I'd say that's probably the Aleutian Islands or the British Islands up there. But it was, the British had a nice base area set up there, and they had the clubs and the things necessary for relaxation. And so when you're in port, fine. When you're out at sea, depends on what the weather was. I thought I was an old salt when I joined the destroyer. That was the Fitch here.
USS Fitch?
Yeah. And I crossed the Atlantic on a Liberty ship to get over there to Europe, but the ship was over there at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was a rough crossing, but didn't bother me at all. I ate 4 meals a day or whatever they were serving. And I got on this destroyer. And we were going out to go over and raid Norway. And I hadn't been out of that port an hour, I bet, before I was feeding the fish. But it got so rough, they canceled the operation. We came back in. So the next time out, I got sick again. But this I got over with within the day out of there. And that was the last time I was seasick, except if I did something like went out and had to rough a night on town.
Did you ever get to raid Norway then, or?
No,
yeah.
No. That was called off, and wasn't. We didn't go back.
So your duties continued mostly in the North Atlantic then with the destroyer?
Yeah, we were in the North Atlantic, and got home just in time for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And then we went out and did some anti-submarine work. We worked with one of these hunter-killer groups. And but didn't find any submarines. This was getting near this was early '44, mm-hmm. And they pretty much had the German submarines under control, and they were getting a little sparse. Mm-hmm. And so we made some convoy runs to Panama. We then left Boston on Christmas Eve to go to Panama. We arrived in Panama on New Year's Eve, New Year's Eve morning, and we left New Orleans at midnight, going on to New Year's, and then went down to Panama, and then we finished that operation. We came back, got ready to go overseas, and we went over for the Normandy operation. And so we went through that, and when we finished that operation, we went down into the Mediterranean for the southern France invasion.
Could you tell us more about what happened at Normandy on that day? What's your memory of that particular day?
Well, I was on my battle station was on top side, the half part of the ship, and I was responsible for the machine gun battery back there, the 40 millimeter battery. And so I had good visibility of the whole operation from back there. And when we briefed on the op order, it gave us just one job: go in and draw the fire from the German shore batteries, report to the big ships so they can knock them out. And it says after that, any assignment after that was if available.
So you were...
It was a suicide mission.
Suicide, you were expendable.
We were expendable. This was the true, we were expendable.
The big planners didn't necessarily think you were going to make it through your first
That's right.
operation.
Well, we went in with our sister ship, and she didn't come out.
What ship was that?
That was the Corey, USS Corey. She was another destroyer from our division. So I think she ended up getting hit by a mine, although we both were being constantly bombarded by the shore batteries while we're in there. We knew that we reported the big ships, but we didn't wait for them to get rid of them. If they were shooting at us, we shot back at them, and we were more successful than they were with us, shooting at us. So it's a little. I remember the first salvos that landed around us. You tended to duck, and then you saw what you were ducking behind, and that wasn't going to do you any good. So you might as well sit there and enjoy the view. And so that's what we did for four constant straight hours of we engaged in counter battery fire with shore batteries, and we knocked the ones out that were shooting at us. And why they didn't hit us, I don't know. It was part of it was due to the skipper. I mean, a lot of it was due to the skipper, because they wanted us to anchor in there, but they gave us an out, and our skipper didn't want to anchor, and I don't blame him. And we would either turn right, turn left, speed up, or slow down when we were dodging the shore batteries, and until they got wise to what we were doing. And then they would, every once in a while, they would guess right and straddle us. Why they didn't hit us, I don't know. But we got out of there, and we went in. We picked the survivors up from the quarry, and they weren't really interested in coming aboard us, because we're still shooting at the shore batteries while we're picking them up. But we did pick a number of them up, and so from then on, it was we were in what we call the screen there, protecting the bigger ships from. I remember one night the E-boats came in and tried to get through.
Those were like German torpedo
boats.
Yeah.
But we had a torpedo boat squadron that was outside of the screen. Our own squadron was Buckley of torpedo fame. He was the skipper of that group. And I remember this one night, the German E-boats were coming in. He put his ships in a column, and he went right, and the German were in two columns, and he went right through the German formation in between the two columns, firing on both sides, and just came out, and he left the Germans to fight out amongst themselves till they sorted things out.
Yeah, Buckley was awarded the Medal of Honor for his action in the Pacific, I think, right?
Yeah.
Didn't he help to evacuate MacArthur from the Philippines?
Yes, yeah.
So then the ship anchored there for a while, I believe. Yeah.
So that was, we ran into the first air-to-surface missiles being used against us over there. Well, they had been used in the Mediterranean before, but here we're a little better prepared. We had some special jamming equipment on our ship, one of the few ships that had it, and I'm surprised they sent us into that to do that shore bombardment, because if they'd lost us, they'd have lost a lot of their jamming facilities.
Was that Normandy?
Normandy, yeah. But anyway, what it was is these were German planes would go over at night, drop a big chandelier flare over you, and there'd be a couple of planes up there, and one would launch the missile, which was kind of a glide type of a missile, and and then he would observe it and make corrections to it and to try to hit a ship down there. I think that we jammed about 7 or 8 of those during this period of time, and they never did hit a ship with one. You were not supposed to do any shooting at planes at night, unless they were attacking you, but directly attacking you. And above all, don't use tracer ammunition. And one of the ships over there, probably not well trained, since it was the 3rd ship of the name, I think it was the Meredith, it opened fire with its machine guns on one of the German planes. Another plane just planted a 1,000-pound bomb alongside it and caved in all its engineering spaces. And last night it was barely afloat, I know, the next morning, and I'm not sure what happened to it. I don't think it sunk there, but capsized and being towed back to England or something like that.
So their firing tracers located them for the German airplanes, right?
Yeah. And then the Germans came up with a new mine that we weren't able to sweep. It was called a pressure mine, set off by the pressure wave of your screws passing over it. And the only way that you could we knew to trigger it was to go over it at high speeds. And if you're lucky, it blew up further enough astern of you that it just shook you up a little rather than damage you. But the Germans were very ingenious in their things they built. And so in those pressure mines, they built in what they called an anti-sweep device, which was nothing like a counter. And so the first ship passing over wouldn't set it off. In the area we were in that day, it was too dangerous to send the minesweepers in, so we never put enough counts on any of their pressure mines that were in there to send any of them off. They started going off around in there the next day, and you'd see a ship with their tail ends blown off that got tangled up with one of them. One of the other destroyers, the Glennon, it went in there and it hit I'm not sure whether it hit a pressure mine or a moored mine. I think it hit a pressure mine, and it was dead in the water in there. The German shore batteries then were working it over real good in there. They sent in the DE to get the survivors off it. And then the DE got a little anxious and cut around the minesweepers that were going in ahead of him and hit a moored mine with his bow, and then backed down. Then in backing down, he backed into another one and set off his depth charge magazines.
Wow.
And that was another ship gone. Wow. And so the first couple of days in there, the Navy, this was all at Utah Beach, incidentally, not in Omaha where the Army took the beating.
Yeah.
And so
how many ships do you think the Navy lost in Normandy?
Well, I saw 3 of them.
Wow. Yeah.
3, 4 of them, all down in our area down there.
Yeah.
There's other ones. I mean, the British lost some up in theirs, but this was the majority. So
you don't hear a lot about it, but there were so many ships there. It was a huge armada of ships.
Horizon to horizon when you were going over there, and then in the morning, D-Day morning, the planes going over. All kinds of troop-carrying planes and everything going over. And I counted somewhere, I don't know why the number 23 rings a bell, 23 of those planes go down. And those were the ones that went down in flames that when you could tell that there'd be a big wolf on the ground. And so the paratroopers over there didn't have an easy job when they getting those things in.
by the end of the day, it was clear that this was a success, though, or was there any doubt in anybody's mind?
No, well, troops were shore in our Utah beach.
Yeah.
I want to say it was relatively easy, but compared to Omaha Beach, the troops had it relatively easy there,
Yeah.
and they were lucking away. Due to some bad currents and things, they didn't land on the beach that they were supposed to,
Right.
and it turned out to be a better place to land where they did. So, well, this is the way things go.
Yeah. You mentioned then that you went to the invasion of southern France and the Mediterranean.
Yeah. Then when we finished up there, from after most of the action of those first few days, they had additional action down off Cherbourg later on. To force to take the port of Cherbourg. They gave us a break from that one. We weren't listed since they didn't expect us to be available, so they didn't make us go. So we got out of that. We got out of that little part of the operation. But anyway, we went down to the Mediterranean for the southern France invasion, and at first we were just doing convoy protection from Oran to Naples primarily.
Yeah.
And then when the invasion of southern France was scheduled, and I remember that was August the 15th, I think.
Yeah.
And so we were in there, and again we were sent in close to the beach to be a forward observer for the Nevada, was it? The big battleship, 14-inch gun battleship, that was going to fire on these German coast defense guns in there. So the Germans, these were 15-inch coast defense guns. And so we were sent into a couple of miles off the beach to spot them, their fire in there. Fortunately, these guns were not unmanned. But I'll tell you, those Nevada's 14-inch shells whistling overhead is a sight to hear. So we didn't have any serious problems down there. One German plane tried to attack us, but he wouldn't fly through our anti-aircraft. So we were supporting the troops in there with a shore fire control spotter. And I remember when we had a bunch of Germans in a small town. And these, when I use the word town, it's just a close group of houses there on the thing. And so he called on us to fire, and he had us put about 100 rounds of 5-inch shells into the town. And when we lifted the fire, the remnants of the Germans were in there, came out with their white flags and surrendered to them.
So you were doing actually like infantry support?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were supposed to do that up at Normandy too, but we never did contact the fellow ashore that was. So he was probably knocked out on the way in.
Yeah. And your assignment then really is, you were then a lieutenant or an ensign?
Ensign.
You were an ensign?
Yeah, I was an ensign back then.
And then what was your assignment on board your ship?
Well, I was assistant gunnery officer, and that was my job was to run the anti-aircraft battery, the anti-aircraft machine gun battery, and which were 40 millimeters in our case.
40 millimeters.
Yeah. And when we finished all that, I became torpedo officer. Of course, our gunnery officer was transferred, and the torpedo officer went up to the gunnery officer, and so I moved up to his job. And when we this happened after southern France and before we came back to the States.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long after that we came back to the States, and I received orders en route that I was being transferred off the ship when I get back.
Okay.
And it turns out that they were going to take the torpedo battery off the ship and turned the ship into a DMS, a destroyer mine sleeper.
Ah.
So they had no need for a torpedo also with no torpedoes on the ship. So they were sending me out to the West Coast to get trained to go with either the Army or the Marines as a gunfire liaison officer. In other words, the guy ashore that takes care of making sure that we're getting the gunfire in support of the troops.
Anglico.
Yeah,
Air and naval gunfire.
Yeah. It was JASCO when I first went to it, and then it became an ASCO, and then then we had Anglico after that.
Now, in between times here, you had a chance to visit your family and keep in touch with your family and that type of thing?
Well, all we had in those days was U.S. mail service.
Right.
And U.S. mail service was sometimes a little on the slow side.
Yeah.
And I know around the Normandy invasion there wasn't any.
Right.
Although they did get some mail from the States, none of our mail got out.
No. When you got back to home port, or were you able to get some liberty and go home and visit and that type of thing?
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
In between the two, the first deployment and this second one, I decided that one person can't do this, so it had to be my wife-to-be and I decided that we wouldn't wait till the end of the war. So we'd wait until I got 2 weeks leave, and during that we'd get married.
Okay.
So this, in conjunction with this new assignment, I had 2 weeks leave or so in there. So I wasn't able to contact her anyway to tell her it was going to happen. So other than she knew it could happen any time. So when we got back to Norfolk on the thing, I didn't even have time to call her to tell her that the marriage is on. So and the reason I didn't was because if I wanted to get transportation home, I had to call my father to meet me down in New York. And so I called him and told him to call my wife and tell her the marriage was on. We were going to get married. And so 3 days later, we got married.
Where did you get married?
Right here in Kingston, St. Joseph's Church. And so it didn't seem, it just seemed a natural sort of a thing to do in that way.
Yeah. So then you got to go toward the Pacific, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went out to San Diego, was where they had there was the amphibious base out there, and they had this naval gunfire support school out there. Went for a couple of months. So I went out after our short honeymoon. I went out there. Fran went back to school. She was teaching at school then. And so she wound up that school term there, and then Christmas Eve arrived out in San Diego so we had a couple of months there together living in a Quonset hut. And before I went out, flew out into the Pacific.
You went out to the Pacific by airplane?
Yeah, flew out of San Francisco to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And they'd asked me, we gave us an option. Do you want to go to the Army or the Marines? And I selected the Marines. My job was out on the front end of things a lot of times. I wanted to know I had a good, reliable group of people around me. We're going to take care of any of the problems that might exist on the front lines.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was out there, and for a while I was training ships on the island that were bombarded on the island of Kalalabi out there, which was the Navy shore bombardment range out in the Hawaiian Islands. And then I got assigned to the 4th Marine Division and went to the island of Maui, where the 4th Marine Division base camp was. And I continued doing the same thing from down there. In other words, when the Marines had exercises on the island, went over and did my thing there, and also continued on, if we were there at the time, we continued on training ships. So, coming through there. And in some respects, being on that island with ships being untrained ships trying to learn shore bombardment was a lot hairier than it was when the Germans would shoot at. So,
Okay. So then you continued the Pacific campaign then?
well, the Marines, the 4th Marine Division had recently returned from Iwo Jima.
Right.
They're pretty beat up there from Iwo Jima, and this was all part of reconstruction on the outfit there. So, as we approached the summer of '45, we were training for the invasion of Japan. The Kyushu, the Kyushu landings and the Honshu landings. Now, basically, we were a reserve division for the Honshu landings, and we were the assault division. For the Kyushu landings, and we were the assault division for the Honshu landings. And and then to make things interesting, I think the regiment I was with was going to take Wake Island on the way back to what I call salve the conscience of the Marines, the Marine Corps. But anyway, it so happened that shortly before we were supposed to board ships to head out west, they dropped a couple of nice bombs over Japan and ended that thing out there. So we didn't even have to sail out that way. And this was a high point there. Needless to say, we celebrated it effectively there on the base camp at Maui. So
that's where you were when you found out that effectively World War II was just about over.
Yeah.
Right?
And the 4th Marine Division at that point in time had been the longest activated one, and was the first one to break up. And then from there I went back to the Navy and back to Pearl Harbor. And I went to school there for a little while, and a gunnery officer's school, and then went over and got a job in the Fleet Training Center in training ships on shore bombardment. And
where was that located?
that was in the Camp Kaplan, which was a Marine site there, and it was a joint Marine Navy site there outside of Pearl Harbor.
Outside of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, and decided that this would be a good place to sit out the Reconstruction period. And so I was able to get a job, as I say, as an instructor out there. And since they were cutting down, everybody was being sent home. I was one of the only regular officer there assigned to this school. I ended up being an officer in charge of the school before it was all over.
What was your actual rank at that point?
I was that named lieutenant then. Yeah.
Lieutenant?
Lieutenant.
I just want to note here that you received a number of awards and medals while you were in the military service, and including the American Defense Service Medal with Star, and the World War II Victory Medal, and National Defense Medal, that was later on, European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 2 stars, Normandy and France, and the American Theater Campaign, also later the Korean Service, United Nations, the China Service Medal, and the Asiatic and Pacific Campaign Medal, also the Navy Expeditionary Medal for activity in Cuba, which we'll get into in about a minute, and the Navy Occupation Service Medal. Now, your next assignments after that time brought you up to, let's just move ahead and talk about the time that you served during the Korean War as well, I understand, right?
Yeah.
Tell us something about that, please.
Well, the Korean War, I was an executive officer on the USS Abbott, which was a Fletcher class destroyer, and I just come off shore duty, and I just come off offshore duty, and joined the ship. It was being under what they call refresher training, being retrained after they do ship every few years, and joined it down in Guantanamo Bay, the Fleet Training Center there. And we came back and then deployed to the Pacific via the Panama Canal. We went out there. It was near the end of the Korean War. We didn't actually have any operations at Korea. Most of the time we were with a carrier task group that was operating in the Formosa Straits. This is the Kimoy Matsu incident down there, where we were doing such things as shooting down some planes down there. We did ourselves, but the Chinese at that time made a mistake of attacking a couple of our AD attack planes. And then those planes turned around and shot the Chinese planes down. And so it was we're playing games down there, Cold War game type of games with the Chinese. And so.
Is that the occasion when you got the China Service Medal? Or?
Yeah, that's where I got the China Service Medal and the Navy Expeditionary Medal there too. And so that was the main thing we were doing out there, except having a wonderful round the world cruise. And of course we crossed the equator in the process, and we crossed the international date line.
Could you tell us a little about the ceremonies that they had on board ship when you crossed the equator? Or?
Well, when you cross the equator, you're paying respects to Neptune, and he comes aboard and inspects every ship that passes through his realm, and so he has a contingent of people who have visited before that make sure that the new ones that have not visited before are properly indoctrinated into the ways of the deep. And so the indoctrination ceremonies, well, you can talk quite long about them, but basically he sends a messenger aboard the ship to tell them what to do and what's expected of them. The ship comes into his realm there. The polywogs, incidentally, the ones that haven't been across are called polywogs, and the ones that have been crossed are called shellbacks. And the shellbacks, make sure the polywogs are properly indoctrinated on the ship. And of course, there's a lot of leading up to this. When you talk, the shellbacks talk about these various things that happen and all this, that really get the polywogs a little concerned about for their existence. So
I understand it includes being anointed with like engine oil and things like that.
Well, they had various items they go through. The polywog goes before the court, and his charges are leveled against him, and of course he's always found guilty. And then he's given a punishment, and the punishment goes through the various routes there. Ones they have the royal swimming pool, which has the sharks in the swimming pool, of course, and there's the royal barber, where he has to get his hair cut, or at least symbolically. And the barber chair is an interesting one that rolls over backwards and dumps him in the swimming pool. And I think before that, I didn't have these things in the right order. Before that, he has to meet the royal baby, who happens to be the fattest shellback on the ship, and he has to kiss the baby's belly, which happens to have some kind of concoction that's on it, maybe consistent of mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and a few other things like that. And and then as I remember, it's a while back, and I had to do this too. I was a shellback. I was a polywog going across that time unaware. But then you had to go through fact that there were some shellbacks around with shillelaghs to urge you along with a proper application to the buttocks. And when it was all over, you were a shellback. The whole ship was shellbacks, and on your way.
Did you have any other things you did for, let's say, entertainment, or how people entertain themselves overall besides these ceremonies?
You mean aboard the ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, you worked.
Work.
Well, most people would be standing watches up to 8 hours a day, some 6 to 8 hours a day on the thing on watch. You had to sleep and eat. You had to keep your places clean. You had to do some training. Mm-hmm. Every day you did training of some kind or another. And we did, Sundays we tried to do nothing but keep the, just do normal cleaning on the ship, but routine cleaning. And but that was the main day that there was many Sundays that didn't happen, because if you were, it depends on where you were on Sunday and what's happening.
Now, you also served during the Vietnam War. Can you tell us something about that, please?
Well, the Vietnam War, I was on an oiler, fleet oiler. This is a tanker that's rigged to transfer fuel oil and petroleum products at sea. And we were operating in Atlantic. While I was on that oiler, I did one med deployment, and Mediterranean deployment, and then another time we went down to the South Atlantic and on it, and picked up the Forrestal. She had an accident out in the arrival of Vietnam, and had a tremendous number of casualties.
Yeah.
And in fact, that was when McCain was involved in that. Yeah. And so our job was to go and get her. We were planning we might even have to go as far as the Indian Ocean to fuel her if we couldn't get permission to fuel her in some ports on the way back.
Yeah.
So we went down and fueled her down there. Down near the equator, and then picked up her destroyers. She had a couple of destroyers with her. We picked them up, and Forrestal took off at top speed. The destroyers couldn't keep up with her. Yeah. Her at that speed. And
what happened at that time, I remember, was that there were a number of aircraft on board the Forrestal ready to make strikes against Vietnam, and a rocket on one of the aircraft launched into, of course, another aircraft on the deck, and then they had a whole series of explosions,
right.
Which blew up a lot of airplanes, a lot of ordnance, and it was quite a. And now Senator McCain was able to amazingly to survive that, because I believe he was in one of the airplanes.
Yeah, he was in one of the airplanes.
Pretty much jumped out into a ball of fire, and then he later went on to be, I guess, to the North Vietnamese for quite a few years on another tour when he got captured. So you were part of the recovery of the Forrestal.
Yeah. So.
Now, just to go back a little bit prior to that, you mentioned to us that you've been involved in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, I was captain of I was captain of the oiler that I had. And I was also captain of the destroyer that I was involved with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we had been converted or modernized, whichever word you want to use, in New York shipyard to what they call a FRAM 1, that's Fleet Rehabilitation and Modernization, FRAM 1 program. And that involved put the ASROC missile, ASROC anti-submarine launching system on the ship, which essentially was a rocket, or a torpedo that was rocket propelled through the air to where the submarine was, and then came down in a little parachute into the water. And also the new sonar equipment and everything else that went with it. And we left New York on early March, and we were we angled with the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962, which was billed by the Weather Channel as the ninth worst storm of the century on there. And we went over to, left New York, went over to the ammo depot over there in Jersey, and loaded out all our ammunition. Then went out and going down to do some training off Norfolk, and then go down to our new home port, which was Mayport, Florida.
Is that arsenal used to be known as Black Tom? Is that what it's called once upon a time?
No, that was out on the, I'm not sure. I don't know where Black Tom was. I heard the name. And,
It blew up.
oh, that was out on the West Coast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was out on the West Coast. Earl, New Jersey.
Earl, okay.
Yeah, that's the weapons depot there. So we had a rough trip down. Didn't think much of it. A coastal storm was going up outside us, so I was going down inside the storm. And yeah, the ship was rolling around a lot, but didn't nothing unusual.
Yeah.
We get down there to Norfolk and ready to start some training, and we get a yell to go up there and look for a fleet tug that lost its tow. Its tow turned up on the Jersey shore, which is one of a reserve fleet destroyer that was pulling. And so we went, they sent us up looking for that. And going up there, back up, I'm going 25 knots because, you're going looking for that guy. So he's in a water, people in the water, you want to get to him.
Yeah.
Going up there, I started running into some flotsam, life preservers, rafts, junk, and I had to stop a couple of times to see if these life rafts had any people in it, but they didn't. And that should have told me that something unusual is happening.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, one of the times during this, I'm doing 25 knots, and 3 waves come out of nowhere.
Wow.
I cleared 2 of them. The third one, I dove right through at 25 knots.
Which ship was this?
This was the Ware. BD-865.
Yeah.
And she, I didn't do too much damage. I did a little to it, but I did slow down. And anyway, it turned up that the tug pulled into Massaquan Inlet and called up by telephone to report its return. All its radios, all its communications were out of commissioner's way.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go back to Norfolk, and by the time we get back there, it's too late to do any exercise. And rather than go into port, which would have just be a waste of time, I just decided to stay out at sea for the night, and so that people have a little training just steaming ship at night. Well, after dark, the radar scope shows a big squall line coming in from the northeast. Squall line moving from the northeast. That is not right. And we had this other storm that passed us by. The cold front had come through. It was just a brisk, starry night. I didn't like it, so I had prepared the ship for heavy weather. And that thing came through. I guess the winds were blowing like 30 knots out of the northeast, and northwest. And as I passed through that squall line, they shifted around to 50 knots out of the northeast, and they did that for the next, and greater for the next 2.5 days. And we were just out there in a survival mode the whole length of time on that thing there, and you couldn't believe it, the damage these waves can do. It wasn't. I was just making steerage way, just moving enough so I could control the heading of the ship and minimize the amount that I was going into the waves. And but what was happening was that this storm that had passed us the day before had circled back in a big circle, and as a storm tends to stay in one spot, it tends to get bigger.
Yeah.
And so it was just under hurricane force. The steady winds were just under hurricane force, and there was winds over hurricane force. The seas had built up to 40 to 60 feet. And what was causing the damage was that in this circle motion, it generates waves coming from different directions. And one wave would climb on top of another. And that's a very unstable situation. And then it just collapsed. And when it collapsed on the ship, you got these tons of water coming down. And it stripped everything off the top side of that ship that you normally welded on. Fire hoses, life jacket lockers, all those things. Just cleaned them off. It took the stanchions which support the lifelines around the ships. I would mind it bending the stanchions down, but one of the things I objected to was these stanchions taking out 6 inches, making a 6-inch hole in the deck when they came out. And of course this put the water down inside the ship. And so the passageways in the ship were like rivers from down through the ship, from the water getting into the ship. And it took all the paint off the ship, topside paint. Now the Navy Yard doesn't do a good job when they paint a ship anyway, but still. So,
Any injuries?
no. At one time during the ship, I lost my steering control during it, and it caused flooding back in the steering engine room. But we got enough pumps on that and got steering back. Steered with the engines for a while.
What was the size of the ship's complement? What was your crew?
About 250. And a lot of them hadn't been to sea before. A number of them, when they went into port, disappeared. And I heard their last seen walking inland with an oar on their shoulder. And when somebody asked them, what is that you're carrying? Then they said, that's where you're going to stop. So,
Was there any time during that you thought that the ship might get lost?
No.
No?
I had the ship properly ballasted down. I knew what had happened to these ships out in the Pacific during the typhoons out in the Pacific. I'd been near some typhoons when I was on the Abbott when I was on that. And so I had full confidence in the ship. I mean, I know it was going to take this damage, but nothing couldn't be fixed.
Let's just quickly take a few looks at some of the pictures here, okay?
Yeah, most of these are Nanahala, the last ship I had.
Okay, this here is...
That's me.
Ah, yeah. There we go. And this ship here is...
That's the Nanahala. That's my oiler. There's another couple of pictures of it. This is the Forrestal we're fueling.
Oh, yeah.
Fueling from down the South Atlantic.
That's after the devastation that the Forrestal had?
Yeah, that was after the devastation of the Forrestal.
Getting all this port?
Yep.
This is being awarded the Battle Efficiency Pennant.
Oh, yeah.
For the Nanahala. I was fortunate that all the ships that I had command of ended up being awarded the Battle Efficiency Pennant.
Oh.
Yes, good.
All you had to do was convince the crew that they wanted to be the best crew,
And they did, huh?
and they did. They helped them be it.
Now, you continued a full Navy career, over 28 years,
28 years active service.
active service. Okay.
Plus the additional, I had that additional reserve service counted
Right.
toward that.
And you're still in the Fleet Reserve?
Well, I'm a retired officer. What I am.
Yeah.
We can be called up in times of war by the president.
What did you do for a career once you did retire?
Worked for myself.
Yeah?
I went back to the old homestead. But been in the family since the early 1900s.
In Port Ewing.
Port Ewing, down there.
Overlooking the Hudson River.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And as I say, everywhere I went, I compared that area with living on the Hudson River, and the Hudson River always seemed better and better.
Yeah.
So I came back there, and it needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
And but I said, can I really retire and not go out and work? Now, by work, I mean go out and earn work that you get paid for.
Yeah.
And I said, let me do a little checking around. So I found out what I could expect to make on the outside. And it didn't take me too long to decide it was going to cost me money if I went to work on the outside. Because I'd have to pay over half of what you made would be in taxes. You'd have to buy a new wardrobe. And you'd have to hire somebody to do all this work around the place that needed to be done, which I enjoyed doing. So I say that 30, how many years ago was that? From 71, we're up to, this is
35
years ago.
Yep.
It worked, I think.
Now you do some, have you done some sailing on your own,
Well, I had a book.
Yeah.
Surely. It wasn't just doing the work around the place.
Yeah.
Which, I completely re-roofed and re-sided it. Put in a new electrical system and all that stuff. I also bought a boat, 28-foot cruiser that I had, and which I just recently got rid of. I also was active with the American Cancer Society. I was a public relations, public information chairman for about 6 years in that. Of course, I've been a member of the Legion in Port Ewing, but hadn't been active in it until I came back here. So I became active in that. I got involved in the American Legion Boy State program, which is kind of one of my loves.
County chairman of the American Legion Boy State.
Yeah. And also a counselor up there at Boy State over a year, so I've been doing that for 30-some years.
And I know you also took up downhill skiing at the age of 60.
Yeah.
I find very
Still
impressive.
doing that.
Yeah, you're still
I'm
doing
going to do that tomorrow.
Okay, get it done before the spring.
Yeah, well, we're running on, you can get it up until mid-April if the weather cooperates a little.
Do you keep in touch with people you served with?
Not really directly. At we have a class from the Naval Academy. We have a major reunion every 5 years, so I go to them.
You attend ship reunions too?
And I go to some ship reunions. These are just some of the ships. I've been eight different ones.
8 different ships.
So, and I haven't been to reunions on all of them, but sometimes the dates don't fit.
It's safe to say you've been just about every place in the world, so it will take us another hour to list all of them, but there's hardly any place you've missed, I guess, huh?
Yeah, down south, down the Australia area. I've never been down in that part of the world. I haven't been up to Alaska. So.
Did you get them romantic when you were going over there?
No.
You ever actually put in?
No.
Okay.
Farthest north we got was Bear Island, which is 78 degrees north latitude.
Not exactly a garden spot.
No.
Can you just tell us how do you feel about your military experience in general, and anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
I enjoy it. I'd do it again. I'm not unhappy at all about being ashore and being retired from it. So it's a young man's game. And although you always feel you could get back and run a ship as well as the rest of them, and take a little learning of all the new stuff they've got that makes it easier. But
have you been involved in any of the overall planning and that type of thing? I bet you probably were. And you mentioned that the ASROC rocket, you had a lot to do with working on that.
well, more of that has been when I obviously I haven't been to sea round numbers, I've been to sea about 50% of the time. When I've been to sea, I've been gone about 75% of the time. The in-between times has mostly been spent in ordnance and missile engineering work. So, although let's just leave it at that, yeah.
Okay.
So, in other words, the gunnery and missile has been my big jobs.
Yeah.
I've, when World War II ended, I was out there in Pearl Harbor. The wife came out. We had a nice year out there, and then they nailed me to leave that nice place I had out there and go back to Norfolk, and set up a gunfire support school there, because it suddenly found out that almost all the officers that had been in gunfire support were reserves and left.
Okay.
So they took the few of us regulars that were in it and divided them half to the East Coast, half to the West Coast. They set up 2 more schools. Then I'd been on this ship, the Salem here, and she was a heavy cruiser.
Yeah.
Heavy cruiser, an 8-inch guns cruiser, and one of the few that had automatic 8-inch guns.
Wow.
10 rounds a barrel a minute of 8-inch stuff. But anyway.
What year was that about? Just to get it.
That was 50.
50?
50.
Yeah.
I'd been on before we talked about the Fitch in World War II.
Yep.
Then my next ship was a Huntington, which was a light cruiser, which I was on for about 9 months, I think. But that gun was gone all the time I was on it.
Yeah.
We went to the Mediterranean, then left the Mediterranean, went down around East Africa and East South America on a goodwill cruise after that. Came back, and then they were going to decommission the ship, so I went to the Salem, and I was the first lieutenant on the Salem, which meant it was my job to keep the ship clean and properly maintain the outside of the hull of the ship, plus all the common inside passageways.
Oh.
So and this was a gold-plated ship. I mean, this was living life like you dreamed of it in that sort of way. You had time to do everything. You had the money to do what needed to be done. So anyway, after we became the 6th Fleet flagship in the Mediterranean for one tour, and then at the end of that tour, I got selected to go to what they called a missile school, out in a joint missile school. You're right on time. Out in Fort Bliss, Texas. So I went out there it was a 9-month course to learn everything about guided missiles. This was in the early days of guided missiles. This is when you went to watch a launch. And so what were they launching? They launched a V1, the German V1 rocket. Half the time it'd go flipping off the end of the launch. They'd launch a V2 on the thing, and a lot of the time we'd go up part way and just blow off for no reason. One of them landed over in Mexico. So, I mean, this is indicative of the learning phase in the early days of that. So, but anyway, so I stayed on there as an instructor at the guided missile school there after I finished the course down there. And so when that was over, then I went to the Abbott out to Korea. That was the destroyer out to Korea. And after that, I came back and was given command of a DE called the USS Joyce. It's a radar picket destroyer, and we were part of the Continental Air Defense System off the East Coast. And that's where I learned about storms, because you go out there on picket duty, and every 2-week picket you're going to get at least one storm, if not 2. But anyway, so from that, then I got selected from to be a part of the initial team that developed the Polaris missile system. Now, that was the Navy's first, first, not intercontinental because it didn't have that much range, but it was the first ballistic missile, submarine launched ballistic missile. And the thing was that they didn't, the initial group there wasn't picked to do that. It was picked to put the Army's Jupiter missile on a Navy ship because that's all they had. They didn't, the Navy did not want to try to launch Jupiter from a submarine. And so anyway, but when they got a small enough warhead, and they developed a warhead that was small enough, then they could reduce the size of the missile and they could make it a solid propellant, and that brought the Polaris program on. So I was in that program for about 3 years. And that, from there, then I went to the Armed Forces Staff College, and from the Armed Forces Staff College, then I went to Springfield, which is guided missile cruiser. It was a World War II cruiser converted to a carrier guided missile system. And I was on that, and that was an experience, working with this new missile system. I mean, things that happen are unbelievable. In that, it's developing a new technique, new systems, and all that stuff. How do you learn? You learn by mistakes, things that don't go the way they were designed to go, things like that.
Well, I know you were good enough to provide us with, or you will provide us with a copy of your biography that you wrote from the time of your service right up to your retirement. So, we're going to include that information when we send it on to the Library of Congress. So I want to thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Appreciate it. You good? Good.